Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon if you're coming in from the East Coast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're very happy to have you here today to share in this great webinar on how to recruit non-traditional adult students during COVID. Now, this presentation is a spinoff of the presentation that we did a few weeks back. So you may say, hey, I think I already attended that one. So no, this one is just a tad bit different. We're going to go into more detail about how Oakwood University has used their non-traditional programs, adult programs to recruit students and how it's been successful on their campus. So we're hoping that you can use some of these nuggets to enhance your programs that you have on your campus as well. Or if you're thinking about creating one, again, hopefully this is some information that you can use. Again, welcome. We're very excited to have you here to take time out of your day. I always say these are some great webinars. If you ever want to see any of our recordings, they are all on demand on our website, Trellis Company. So you can go out there and download or look at any of the recordings that we have. If you're not really sure how to get there, contact your ISC and they will let you know. Again, Dorothy, thank you. Good morning. And if you can, please, as I always ask, put your name and the institution that you're representing in the chat. We love to see who all is joining us today. And again, welcome. We have some great information to share with you today. I'm going to allow just a few more minutes for others to come in, but because we have so much to cover, we will be getting started soon. So if you can, put your information in the chat. Again, good morning, Dr. Langley. We have Mr. Scott Brenham from Galveston College. Welcome. Also, my buddy, Mr. Taylor, hi, from Southern. So great to see you. We have Sarah from Concordia. We also have, Mavany Jeffries from Jarvis? Welcome. Barbara Garcia from HT. Welcome. Ashley from Galveston. We also have Adriana Becker, Bryant Bradley, Miranda Thomas from Bishop. Great representation from Bishop College. Thank you for attending. As you heard, for most of you who came in a little earlier, this presentation is being recorded. I will be sending that copy of the recording to you after the presentation, usually around 2 to 3 days. So you'll get that information. So again, thank you. Oh, Miss Love, good to see you from Jarvis Christian College. Welcome. So I'm gonna allow just, not minutes, a few more seconds to see if we have any more come in. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function. I will be monitoring that throughout the presentation, or even if you want to put it in the chat, I'll also be looking at that as well. So again, thank you for attending. So since we have so much to cover, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to start off by introducing these lovely ladies from Oakwood University who have agreed to present today, and we are so grateful. Thank you again. I'm going to start off with Dr. Ellenwood Goodridge. Dr. Ellenwood Goodridge serves as the Director of Adult and Continuing Education and the Leadership Education for Adult Professionals, which is their LEAP program at Oakwood. And she has been in the field of adult education for over 15 years. Dr. Goodridge received her BS in Behavioral Science from Atlantic Union College and an MA in Education, actually focusing on adult education and training from the University of Phoenix. She completed her doctoral studies at Capella University, concentrating in educational leadership and management. Welcome, Dr. Goodridge. Thank you again for agreeing to present with us today. Next, we have Ms. Shonda Cotton. Shonda is a part of the enrollment management team, and she teaches at Oakwood. She's the director of the New Beginnings. She also is a professor of theology and social work. And Shonda will be graduating with her doctoral degree in social work in June 2022. Congratulations, Shonda. And thank you also for being here today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Goodridge.
All right. Well, the gates are open. Thank you so much, Teresa. And thank you, Dr. Jones, for the opportunity to present this morning, afternoon. And thank you to my colleague, Shonda, who is tag teaming with me today. I am so excited about this information because adult education, adult learning has been a part of my life. And as we go through this presentation, we're going to look at some level of scholarly input in terms of what is out there, best practices and so forth related to adult education, but also looking at it contextually within the framework of what we do at Oakwood University in the Department of Adult and Continuing Education. So we want to welcome you for taking the time out and being with us today. And so we're going to be looking at methods for recruiting non-traditional adult students during COVID, which we kind of still are in. So in looking at this particular topic, understanding that, yes, it's what we have done at Oakwood, but I want everyone on this, in this space with us, to understand that it can very much be a part of what you do as well. And you might see things that you are doing, and things that you might have thought of or otherwise. So we just want to make sure that it's an open experience and that what we're sharing can very much work within other contexts. So please understand that the practices are essentially universal. When you look at COVID has hit essentially the pause button on the world, and we're still in it, even though many times, we want to think we might be past it and so forth, but technically we're still in it. And so every industry that we have known has had some impact due to this essentially world pandemic, as it's called. And so education is no different. So in looking at the seminar description, we are essentially looking at some of the best practices overall within the science and world of adult education and teaching within the context of higher education. But we're also looking at what this small HBCU in Huntsville, Alabama has been doing as well. So let's think about it. Think with me. Student life before the pandemic, right? Remember those days way back when? Business as usual, teacher up front at the board. Okay, maybe we might be past the chalk, but teachers at the front, we've been doing this for 200 plus years. And the emphasis is on high school to college, face to face. And when you think of the services for these students, the services were, between the typical business or what we used to call banker's hours, 9 to 5, 8 to 5. And anything outside of that, was labeled or would be labeled this non-traditional, older student. And there was really no real established framework for these learners. When I think back personally, growing up, my mom was in school when I was in elementary school. So there were schools back in the 70s or so, 80s, that were actually catering to these learners. So many times we think it's a new thing, but it's not. It's really not that new. So now this is our reality, right? The effects of the pandemic. Look at where we are. We're on, webinars have taken on a whole new level. everybody knows what Zoom is, even though I heard of Zoom even before the pandemic, but now Zoom is now in my home, right? And the job market has changed. There's an emphasis, the emphasis on education has changed. When you think about priorities have changed, schools have been forced, whether they want to or not, they have been forced to make all kinds of adjustments because of this, and which in turn now will affect support services related to these students, which it has so much more intensified, because you're talking about mental health, you're talking about all kinds of things now that are affecting learners that are as a result of the pandemic. And now student needs are paramount, which brings us to the not only clientele, but our focus for today, the adult learner. And as I said, the adult learner who is dear to my heart, because my mom was an adult learner. And then later I became I consider myself more so a lifelong learner. So in just creating definitions as we go through this, 18 to 24 is considered the traditional learner, what Roberts calls youth-centric. And so he talks about this youth-centric bias that we have in terms of the focus on that learner between 18 and 25, took their ACTs, SATs, and now, finished up high school and going into college. Yes. However, the focus here, we're dealing with individuals. We define the adult learner as those who are 25 years old and older. These individuals are entering or re-entering higher ed. They may not or may be working adults. They may or may not have families. They have increased life obligations. The millennials, they're now adulting. They're not looking for the co-ed experience. They're not trying to be in anyone's dorm and going to frat parties and, things like that. These individuals, they're more focused on their targeted goals because it's all about maybe job promotion. It might be relocation. It might be setting an example for their children that they now have. And many of them are financially challenged, and so either they might have taken loans out before during that traditional era, and now in coming back, they have to deal with, maybe they were in default, all kinds of things. And there's a varied experience. They've had a varied experience as it pertains to higher ed. And so the needs access to service these individuals outside of the typical banker's hours, the typical 9 to 5, 8 to 4 is very much present, because many of these individuals, they're working. They're taking care of children, or they're taking care of, a parent. They're a caregiver for a parent. That is just the reality of the adult learner. So let's look at, some data related to this. You're seeing this span is over 25 years. And so you're looking at Roberts data, and then you're also looking at the National Center for Education Statistics. You're looking at individuals that are 25 years old, and then those who are even 35, showing that there has been an established trend, and that established trend you can find historically came out of the GI Bill from 44. And then when you're looking at the Civil Rights Bill from 64, those essentially laid the framework of establishing opportunities for adults, older individuals, to come back to school and either get the support of the government or just have a right to pursue, higher ed or, complete a degree or anything like that. So in looking at this, you understand the adult learner is not new to the party. They've been there. They have been there. And what has happened is that life events, essentially now we're highlighting this pandemic, this COVID, this has now solidified, established, kind of like jarred higher ed education. Hey, look, these people are here. What are we going to do to serve them? So it means you have to be flexible. That's what it's saying. You have to be flexible. When I think about the learners that I serve, you have to think about these individuals as individuals. Yes, there are obviously, cohorts and groups of students that we all serve and so forth, but a good administrator, a good instructor, a good professor always seeks to connect and find out what's going on with each individual's he or she is serving. And so flexibility is needed because you might have learners who are dealing and having childcare challenges, which Shonda will talk about. You might have learners that are dealing with financial aid issues. They're now in default. You have learners that might need help in terms of getting back in the saddle related what is a conjunction again? Is that comma goes before or after? The whole nine. So institutions have to be flexible in serving these individuals because they are coming back targeted, directed, with an expectation of service because they are paying students as well. And as any good institution, you want to serve all those who come to your door. So what can institutions do to adopt? Main thing is course offerings. So as I shared with you, I remember, growing up, my mom was in school, when I was in school. And the reality, she was relegated to either night or she had to adjust her work schedule. So it's important to make sure that course offerings are flexible so that learners are able to, not only take classes, but hop in, hop out within reason when completing programs and courses and so forth. That's also related to the services, which is something that personally, again, because of what I do and my learners, I hear a lot about the availability of the service offices being open and available after hours. Understanding that these individuals are coming from a day of work, childcare, caregiving, or so forth, and they might still need to talk to someone in financial aid, or they might need to get their student ID taken. How is that going to be done? So it's important to have flexibility with availability of services, also course schedules. Again, also course load. You might have learners who are able to take more classes or less classes, but you want that flexibility. And the instructional modality is key. We've all been, again, because of COVID, pushed into this virtual setting. Not that it didn't exist before, but it's on a grand scale now. So when you're looking at the modality of synchronous and asynchronous instruction, that's a staple for educational success today, as well as, of course, you can have hybrid approaches and so forth. As Teresa was sharing, from my bio, also when I went to school, I was able to take classes because there was asynchronous learning available. So if you're looking to serve adult learners, it's important to have different options of modality of instruction, as well as related to the programs. You could also have self-paced instruction, where there are institutions that have what's called a shelf course, and individuals are able to purchase those courses, and they're actually student led, and they can complete the course. Each institution has its own parameters. You can complete either in 6 months or a year and so forth. All of those kinds of things really lead to flexibility. Additionally, when we're serving these individuals and serving anyone, because it's really about respect and understanding the difference between equality, equity, and inclusion. And so in looking at that image, we wanted to show what that actually looks like, because there are times when we get it confused in terms of you're offering, equality, but equality is different to equity. And as individuals, we all have that right and should be given that right within the institution we have chosen to attend. That inclusion, equity, and equality is across the board. Adult learners should not feel like they're second-class citizens. They shouldn't be made to feel as if they're not valued in the institution or not included. And that includes in terms of the services, inclusivity, and also the quality of instruction. So Robert says, in terms of institutions and administrators, rules and policies and procedures are important. They're necessary, but they should actually serve a purpose. And the purpose served should not be blind. It should see the individuals. It should see the cohort. It should see the clientele to ensure that their needs are being met. And that can come out of a conversation. It can come out of committees who are dedicated to serving these populations. And the goal is to have the spirit and not just the hard line approach in serving these individuals. So what are some of the things institutions can do? Well, in particular, that's how I arrived at Oakwood University. There was, and still is, a department that's dedicated to adult learners. And so we have what's called a degree completion program. And understand that, just like pinning that, recruiting, and I'm going to get into that because I don't want you to lose the path, and understand that all of this is related to recruiting. All of this programming, scheduling, equity, everything is a part or plays a role in bringing individuals in to an institution. So at Oakwood, there is a degree completion program, an accelerated program dedicated to serving adult learners who have not completed their degree. A part of that program is credit for prior learning, or those who have an associate's degree and they want to go from an associate's to a bachelor's degree. And hopefully we will add certifications, but certifications are also a huge part and area that these particular learners can benefit from. Which brings us to the services. As I said, my colleague, she's going to really expand on this, but it's important that the services are in place. So we want to ensure that customer service is, as they would say, is on point. I take customer service personally. I really do. If a prospect says, "Oh, Ms. Goodrich, I tried to reach you and I couldn't reach you," I'm going to search my email. Did I overlook an email?
Did you say that again?
Oh, I'm having trouble hearing you. Sorry, that's Siri. But yeah, I'm gonna find out. You want to make sure you call individuals back. You want to make sure that there are fully automated services, because individuals might be checking in at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. You want to make sure there's tutoring services, again, because these learners, they're coming back and they are at different levels academically. You want to also make sure there's an electronic library in place with multiple, databases and technological support 24/7. So areas, where can we find these students? It's really everywhere. You should always have a mindset open, in that you could be in a Publix. I don't know if you have Publix. You could be in a Publix. You could be in a Walmart. You could be at church, a baseball game. It's nothing to strike up a conversation, or someone might give you a lead in for you to jump on. But I'm just going to hit on former students. I don't know. I know this is what Oakwood does, but I don't know how many institutions are intentional about reaching back to non-completers. Because you want to talk about what's called low-hanging fruit? That's low-hanging fruit. You know them already. You have their information. They've been with you already. Unless it was a bad experience, you can still have an opportunity to make things right, or, reestablish in a relationship. So in terms of places and ways to connect and attract with adult learners, you have the gamut right there. So enrollment strategies, you're talking about, it's a comprehensive report. You have print, you have digital, you have broadcast media, you have social media, you have telephone. And again, research is showing in terms of the power and presence of social media in higher ed, and what can be used and done in terms of capturing and utilizing this powerful tool for serving, recruiting, informing. I mean, it's almost limitless what can be done in a well-managed social media platform. So in terms of recruiting, you're talking about booths and conferences, graduations, community events. You have to have a mindset that enrollment strategies are not limited to just recruiters, but we all recruit. We all are a part of that process. So networking with your local businesses and the community colleges. If you're a 4-year institution, if you're a 2-year institution, then you're reaching back in terms of like high school, as well as adults who did not make that jump initially between completing high school and then going to higher. I'm moving up. I felt like maybe I was going too slow. So let's look at the best practices. Create services that support women in their 30s and 40s returning to school. You know why? Because research shows that women are doing it. Now, that does not take away from men in any way. Please don't, please. But I'm just saying, statistically, historically, looking at the data, hands down, more women return to school, are enrolled, are moving forward when it comes to higher ed, degree completion, or going back. Shonda said she's working on that doctorate. I worked on my doctorate. So women are doing, so you want to make sure services are in place, like sometimes childcare. Additionally, you want to create processes that are integrated with previous college work. So that's something that we have done in terms of credit for prior learning or lifelong learning. If you have someone who has been a manager at, say, Taco Bell the last 5-10 years, that person has been, if they're good, of course, that person has been practicing all the managerial principles that you would find in the academic classroom. So it's now important for the academics now to create a path for these individuals where they can utilize that practical real world experience in showing competency on the academic side for those courses. Also, creating programs that support, again, academic performance at different levels, in that you have learners who have not been in the classroom, virtually or otherwise, in years, right? So you want to make sure there's scaffolding in place for these learners to ensure that someone who is a high performer, they're still challenged, they're there, as well as someone who has forgotten, okay, do I capitalize states, days of the week? All of those kinds of things. It's vitally important. And then again, creating a path to receive credit for prior learning is key, because these individuals, many times more than not, have been out there. And so what they have done out there in the real world can many times over connect directly with academic experience. And finally, of course, creating flexibility. We spoke about flexibility with academic progress. You might have learners, again, we have this kind of youth-centric bias where, you think of college and it's like 4 years you should be done, or 5 or 6 years, you should be done. But with adult learners, that's not always the case. We have students who might have come in and started in 2016, and they were in for the fall and in for the spring, and they even did summer. And then the following fall, they weren't able to come back. The following spring, they were not able to come back. But you know what? They were able to come back that following summer. So we have to be flexible in knowing that there are all kinds of life challenges where these learners might have to drop off for a minute, but we always want to make sure we create opportunities to bring them back and ensure that their academic progress stays intact as long as they stay with you, because that's the goal. So these are 5 key components that are specific to the adult learner within the higher educational framework. So when you think of the future, right, where is this all going? And the impact of the pandemic, and you think of what has happened with what they call now the Great Resignation. People are rethinking, and with all that's going on with college debt and all these things, is it now more about skills and certification, or is it academic degrees? Higher ed has to reevaluate itself, itself in terms of understanding the value that was once placed on that piece of paper is now essentially being questioned. And it's more so about competencies, which are certification based, as opposed to necessarily a diploma, which just said, I went through, this curriculum. So I trust that there was something shared that was meaningful. And at this time, when I was growing up, I used to watch WWF. And so you would then tag your partner. So I'm tagging you, Shonda, to jump on in the ring.
Thanks, Dr. Goodrich. Always nice to work with you. We've tag teamed many a times. We spearheaded the enrollment increase for the LEAP program, a continuing education program together. A couple of things right quick before I get into some of the non-traditional things that new beginnings that we did. We started off with amnesty, with our amnesty program. Now, our amnesty program, when Dr. Goodrich talked about the returning students, the former students who did not complete, our amnesty program said, we will set your bill aside. Whatever you owe Oakwood University, maybe it was your bill that didn't come back because made you not come back, or maybe that's a barrier. We set that amount aside, whether it was $10, $20, $30,000. If you graduated from Oakwood, we wrote off that to allowance for doubtful accounts. It didn't go against your credit. You didn't owe Oakwood anything. It was just kind of our congratulations for coming back. So that was our amnesty program. Another thing we did was we did phone calls, of course. We would call them like around the clock in the evenings when they were off work, because we know most of them work. They're older students, so they're not online. So we called them literally. For the younger ones, we use text messages. We use postcards. We use Trellis. We thank them for their rollout and participating in getting the amnesty word out there, the phone calls, the text. But we also had dedicated workers for financial aid and evening hours for student financial services, so that we had a dedicated worker who worked with LEAP. So there was a person assigned in our student financial aid programs just for the LEAP individuals. We didn't make them wait in line because that's an egregious thing. We offered online registration, but we offered it to them in the evenings after 6 p.m. so that they would be able to go to work, get home, not rush. And the reason we offered it from 6 to around 8 is if maybe they're on the West Coast, because it's actually virtual. So they don't actually have to come in. LEAP is also virtual. So they don't actually have to come in. So they could do the whole process in the evenings in that manner. So that was the other thing that we offered, was private times. The online registration and the online tutoring is also available. So she mentioned them, but she didn't mention that we do all of that online. They never have to come to the office to do anything. Everything can be handled 100% virtually in the evenings, where we have live people on there where you can interact with them. So it's an actual Zoom room set up where they can ask questions and interact, and they can get private help on how to fill out FAFSAs and other things, because like she said, they're coming back. But now we want to get into our greatest asset here, which was New Beginnings. New Beginnings, next slide. New Beginnings is our single parent student resource center. And so New Beginnings is because we decided that we were going to be the helping hand, because 2 is always better than 1. So we partner with our single parent students. They do not have to be in the area, and they also do not have to attend Oakwood University. But just as a general encourager, if you're a student and you're a single parent, to get you back in school, because education breaks the cycle of poverty. Next slide. So some of the things, I'm not going to read this off, but we did a market review. Our market review showed us that the total median income from unmarried moms was only $24,403 in the greater Huntsville area, and that married families, their income was $84,541. So you can see the disparity in finances. And we said, hey, that's about a $60,000 disparity that we can simply close in the gap by being the second person and by educating them. And so we tested the market at first with New Beginnings to see how it would go. And so you can see that there was, with 60% of the homes being headed by unemployment, by single parents, and them being not able to work and go to school without a program and help, that was helpful. Next slide. So our strategy was simple. We wanted to provide safe and productive learning environments. And you can read on there that what we basically did, and we wanted to prepare staff. We had staff, people from the program actually had to give back and work as staff once they graduated. But what we did was we gave them everything they needed. As you read on the list, you see that there's individual group counseling for parents and children. There's tutoring, there's outdoor play. We provided food boxes. We provided a computer lab, a play area, just about anything you can think of when there were two people that would be provided for that family. We closed in the gap. And that was our strategy for getting them back to school. Next slide. So just so you can see, just kind of briefly with the bullets more accurately, you can see the things we provided for academics and then the things we provided for the children, because we know that if you can get the children interested, the parents will return. So the key factor is childcare, child engagement. That is big for especially a single parent. They want to know their kids are safe. They want to know, hey, I'm going back to school. I need help. And so we decided that not just education stuff, because we do give scholarships, we do give books, we do give financial emergency assistance and things like that. But we decided that helping not just the parent, but the kids was going to be a crucial part of it. Next slide. So this kind of breaks down some more services that we provided. Case management, that means you literally have a dedicated person who looks through your individual records and makes the needs assessment based on directly what you need in your family. And so those are all the things that we provide. The Secret Angel product is probably the ones that you wouldn't understand. The Secret Angel project means we actually have sponsors who will sponsor a whole family. So they will provide financial assistance in many areas for the whole projects. Also, emergency service assistance. We also, when we started off with a grant from Trellis that also helped out. So big shout out to them and the emergency assistance. It was no little bit that they offered. I think the grant started off was like $10,000. And so we appreciate that. That was, we used Trellis as bait for other agencies and institutions to put money in. And I think to date, our thing is about $80,000 a year where we get contributions from other agencies and institutions for this program. So we're grateful for that. Next slide. So kind of just a little bit about Huntsville. Huntsville is a very diverse area. It is a college town. It is a smorgasbord of not just HBCUs, but other colleges and universities. I think if we counted them, just colleges and universities in Madison County alone, Alabama, was 12. So we wanted to make ours. What makes Oakwood different? What makes it more competitive? Our new beginnings and our leap makes us more competitive. So when you're thinking about how to increase your enrollment, what makes you stand out? You need to make programs that no one else has. So by offering it to all colleges and universities, they have to come on our campus to get the services. And so we've had a lot of them say, well, if we have to get services from Oakwood, we're transferring. So offering that as bait to all colleges and universities has allowed us to do that in an area that is just kind of up and coming. We are now the #1 city in the state of Alabama. Huntsville has outgrown our previous capital, Montgomery. We've outgrown Birmingham, which was previously larger. And so we want to be competitive. We want those students here, but not just to grow our population, but to decrease poverty. We want to be impactful in that area. Next slide. And then so you want to significantly increase your agency's impact in the community at large. And so this is the way you do it. Increase the number of students and families that you serve. So the more families and the more funds we can get in New Beginnings, the more number of students that we have. Increase the number of grants annually, target doubling your grant funds. That means write more grants for your non-traditional students. There's so many out there, and not even government grants, but we've received private grants from agencies like that are specific to our state. So you want to do that, and you want to focus on collaboration with your Center for Student Success. Now, for us, that's our learning center, where if you have any deficiencies, they help you. Then you want to collaborate with high schools, because high school is where you start recruiting the students who are single parents. They have a high dropout rate. So your non-traditional students, one of the high school things that we do is we recruit in our alternative schools, because those students are less likely to go to college. So that's another thing you want to do. You want to expand and make your facilities very modern, because everybody is affected by the ambiance of where you go. You want to provide, quality social emotional. You want to provide all those areas. And of course, you want to develop residential options for single parents and their children, because that's big. Because anybody can stay in the dorm or whatever, but you need residential facilities. Next slide. We're just going to kind of go into questions. I tried to, leave some time for the questions and be pretty brief. So if there are any questions, we can answer them at this time.
I do have one, Ms. Cotton and also Dr. Goodrich. A question came about this and asked, please provide your non-traditional recruitment tactics and strategies that assisted with enrollment growth. Can one of you guys expand on that?
So like I said, we kind of worked together and we literally pulled a list. We started, like Dr. Goodrich said, with our institution. We pulled a list of every student in the last 10 years who had not completed their started degree. So that's how we started. We said, these people, before we go online and we start our online presence, which we did that second, we beefed up the online presence and we used Google statistics. And Google, believe it or not, collects a lot of stuff on people. What you put out there, it comes back. It will tell you your connections, people you have tried. If you've ever even looked at Oakwood University, we pulled that, and we also contracted with companies such as Trellis. We also had other companies that would pull people off of our Google thing. And so from those lists, we contacted each and every one of them. We knew them specifically, and we contacted them by name. And then when we got the list, we sent it back to the lead area, and Dr. Ellen Gold and her team, literally anyone who had any interest, and it was hundreds of people, they personally called them and spoke with them and answered their questions and recruited them, her and her team, individually. So it was kind of like you started off with generic enrollment and recruitment. Our recruiters basically focused on the traditional students. So it was literally like a specific team, and Dr. Ellen Gold Goodrich, who did that. And then, like I said, the amnesty actually sent a lot of people back. And then we collaborated, like we said, with the financial aid, because a lot of them don't even understand how to fill out a FAFSA or what that is, with them coming. And they were real good that after Dr. Goodrich would develop a list of people who were interested, then we would send it to the Student Financial Aid Services, and they would contact them and help them fill out the financial aid. Dr. Goodrich may have some more things she wants to add, but those were our basic, phone call, text, and just kind of answering their questions and being ever present on the internet. Just kind of, you can pay for, like, when people click on any college, for a pop-up to appear for Oakwood University Adult Continuing Education, and then lowering our age range from 25 to 22 was a good administrative decision that they made, so that we could get some of the younger people who may just not be, because they have kids in other situations too, may not be able to retire. Dr. Goodrich?
Yeah, so Shonda gave a wealth of information. I don't know, I'm kind of stuck on tactics because I see it more so as an institutional approach, but highlighting another area in particular is building and establishing partnerships. So when we spoke about the whole mass resignations that we're all dealing with across America, if in keeping up with the news, there are a number of, like, when you think of large companies like your Amazons and your Walmart and your Starbucks, those companies then began to adjust benefits for their workers. And one of the major adjustments that have been done across the board for a number of businesses is that they offer tuition reimbursement, either for books or for courses or to complete a degree. So one tactic per se is beginning to, again, locally, typically you would have you would have a Walmart, most places have a Starbucks, or whatever that is significant to your area. So Shonda spoke a lot about in terms of Huntsville and the growth and all that's going on here. What's unique about Huntsville that most other places is that we have a huge arsenal. There's an arsenal that is deep rooted, a part of this city. And what adult and continuing education, we take out an ad in their what's called the Redstone Rocket. So we make sure that there's a presence because there's nearly 100,000 people just on the arsenal. So I don't know what your arsenal is, wherever you are, but it's important to leave the office and begin to form and establish partnerships and present your institution in a way that someone else will see the benefit in that partnership. So I hope we were able to answer that question in terms of tactics.
Thank you so much, Dr. DeRich. I do have a couple more out here. I think, Shonda, you may have been typing for one of the other questions, but, and I believe you wanted to answer this one. What are the biggest obstacles your non-traditional students have to overcome?
So, of course, if you're a parent, a single parent, childcare. And that was one of the reasons for New Beginnings. Some of them is the time frames. They work all day. And so they need something that's flexible with the times. That's why we opened the evening financial aid, because they were very, very much, the study showed, in need of flexibility in times. Like Dr. Goodrich said, the extreme flexibility. Other obstacles that we have is some of our information is dated, which means you may have wrong phone numbers. You may have bad addresses. So reaching them is hard. Also, sometimes they may not even know that they're interested in the education. They'll be like, why do I need that? So that's probably a big obstacle. If they're successful already financially, then a lot of them, one of the biggest obstacles is introducing them to the fact that they still would benefit from not being trapped in a certain field or area or job by expanding their education. Financial is also a really big obstacle, making it affordable. So Dr. Goodrich and her team have done a really great job of making education affordable, reducing actually the price. LEAP is probably our cheapest program. Well, I shouldn't say cheap, I should say our least expensive program, our adult continuing education. So just especially during the pandemic, our enrollment has increased every year for about 50%, just by providing those services. Because we were already 100% online with LEAP before the pandemic, it made it easy for us to recruit people because now they're looking for online. So instead of it being a situation where we lost people, we actually gained people during the pandemic. People were more at home. So when we called them or emailed them or text them, they were available to talk and respond because they were working from home. A lot of them were, I guess, just sitting around waiting for something to do. The Great Resignation, so people being unemployed also helped. So that was an obstacle that we didn't have to overcome. And so some of the things that the pandemic provided end up being blessings for our increase.
Wow, that is great. As one of our attendees said, very impressive numbers. So that is so good. I'm very happy to hear the success at Oakwood University. We have about, I guess, a few more minutes. Not sure if anyone else had any questions for these young ladies or not. We do have time. Again, this webinar is being recorded. I will send this out to you who have attended today. So if you have any more questions, I will wait just a few more seconds to see if we have any more questions coming in. In the meantime, Ellen Gold and Shonda, if you have some closing remarks you'd like to give.
Dr. Goodrich, would you close out?
I just want to thank the attendees for taking the time to connect with us today. I trust, obviously, I don't know each of you, but if adult education within the higher educational context is your area, it's something that I would love to connect and discuss with you in terms of how we can continue to create opportunities for adult learners to complete, to move forward, to essentially meet their goals and objectives. So it was a pleasure being with you this morning, afternoon. And of course, thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Dr. Jones, for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. We really and truly appreciate it. Now, before we let you go, I did have one more question that came in, which I think is a great question. What difficulties have you had with getting faculty to deal with remediation?
Right. It has been a challenge in that, and again, that's coming from what we spoke about earlier, this kind of youth-centric bias, in that you have faculty members that are used to just, because it has been the norm. You have learners who are fresh out of high school, and they're coming from high school with all their standardized testing and so forth, and then dropping right into the higher ed experience. So what we have done within adult and continuing education, yes, there are some faculty members who also teach traditional, but we also have a cohort of instructors who are dedicated to these students. So they know ahead of time the type of learners that they will be dealing with. And so it takes a certain kind of faculty member who has that calling, that leaning, that persuasion, that openness to accept and work with these adult students who, again, might not have been in this academic setting in a long time. So it's a matter of also providing professional development training for these individuals, which we do provide through our faculty research and development department. So it's crucial that training is in place, and it's also crucial to have individuals who are open and have a desire to work with these particular student group. So that's how our faculty have kind of navigated that.
Great questions. Great
Yes.
questions. Okay, so we are at the top of the hour. So thank you so much again, ladies. Great, valuable information. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And we wish you a great rest of the week and a great afternoon or evening. Have a good one.